Aloha and welcome everyone to this new episode of Finding Focus. Today I have a wonderful guest, Stephanie Martinez Rivera, and she is the host of Joy Found Here podcast. And she recently invited me to do an episode on her podcast. And I, without even really knowing what her podcast was about, I so was just automatically drawn to and in love with the name of that podcast. So I said yes, even without even researching very much, because it just felt so aligned with everything that I wanted to share with people and about other people's journeys. So with that, I want to welcome Stephanie here. And we just talked earlier, even before we started recording, that we both just love these coffee style conversations. So if you see me even just grabbing my
Mhm.
coffee cup, that's really what this is about because I love just meeting people for coffee. And we kind of got away from that for a few years when we couldn't meet with people. And now that we're back to being able to meet with people, but now in this virtual environment, and I can meet with people from other places, it's fantastic.
That's
And
the magic behind it. Love it.
so if there was anything good about those years that we had to not be in connected with people, it taught us how to find another way of being connected. And so I love that, especially here I am in Hawaii, and Stephanie, as she's going to tell you, she's in New York, right? So we are, across the continent, but able to connect in this really warm way. And I'm very grateful that you're here. And I'm just looking forward to having this great conversation with you. So, as we get started, I'm going to ask the proverbial question that everybody starts out with was I read your little background, not little, but I read your background, but I want you to just kind of jump in and tell us a little bit more about you because I just want to know more about you because I find what you're doing, your podcast and everything fascinating.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Coming to you from Long Island, New York, the East Coast. And you are in my favorite place on earth, the place where I would love to have my family compound, that wonderful, beautiful state of Hawaii. So, hey, something about me. As you said, Kathy, and thank you so much for having me. I am the host of the Joy Found Here podcast, a passion project that I started 4.5 years, will be 5 years in April of 2026, just as I was turning 60. Have started another yet version of my life, which I hope there are plenty more behind this one. This one is really, really, really good. And it comes off the heels of a really shitty, I hope I could say it,
You can say
season.
anything.
A really shitty season in the end of 2024 where, my dad, who was 91, God bless, had gotten ill and passed, and my husband was having some health issues, and my job of I was an HR director for 13 years, company got sold, and I knew I was duplicate, I was redundant, and the clock was just ticking. And knowing as I was in that position, what really lies ahead for, and I don't want to limit myself, but for a 64-year-old professional. So it was a time to get real and think about what else there is for me. Also, on the heels of all of that, my daughter was pregnant with our second grandchild, and we have a beautiful granddaughter in addition to our grandson. So I'm a huge believer in the universe and use your words wisely and carefully because when you ask, it is given. Sometimes we don't like the way it's delivered, but it does appear. And faith has a lot to do with it. I am married to my wonderful husband for 42 years. We have three amazing adults. And yeah, that's about me. I'm just always been a lover of life, even when it doesn't seem that everything is going the right way. When I was 24, I lost my mother when I was pregnant with my first daughter. So it's interesting because it wasn't lost on me that I had 24 years with my mom and I had 63 and a half years with my dad.
Wow.
Again, all all those things for a reason. And I started my podcast because I find people so interesting. I'm so curious because you and I and everyone else, we're here today, but how did we get here? How did we get here? And again, we tripped on some potholes in the road, but you rise. You rise and you rise even better. We're here so for a reason, and it's a really, really good one.
Absolutely. Now, how did you come up on the title Joy Found Here? Obviously, it ties into your story, but were there other themes or topics or titles that you even considered for that? Or was that just the one?
Follows. So you and I met through our mutual connection, which is Michelle Soro. She created a course of the podcaster accelerator course with Ginny Sorati. I took the course to like, I want to do a pod, but I didn't know how, but I didn't know how I do the podcast. Okay. 8 weeks. There were obviously deadlines. And if you wanted your episode up, you had to have this done and that done by this week and that week. And I went into this knowing for at least 3 years I wanted to have a podcast. I listened to podcasts, I consumed a lot of podcasts, and I always thought the title would have my name in it. And during 1 week of when the titles were due, perhaps I missed something along the way. And when the class was on, and thankfully it was based on Pacific time, not Eastern time. So I had a 3 hour window to hurry up and do something if I missed something. And in this case, important part, I missed that. Not so much finding your title, but do a little research. If you want a website, there's a domain, there's a this, there's a that. Make sure there's not another one. I missed that whole part. And the name I originally picked, which I honestly to this day, I could maybe tell you, maybe I'd be right, maybe I'd be wrong. The one I knew I wanted to have, I realized I forgot. And so I'm hurry up. I go online and I see that domain's not available and there's a podcast out there. Whether it was active or not, I couldn't see past that. I was just like, oh man, okay, this is not good. Now, what am I going to do? So I allow myself literally a 5-minute cry session. I'm great at procrastinating. And I say I work well under pressure. That's a lie. It's a line of bullshit. Sorry. So I give myself my little pity party, but I also know that I can do this. I sat on my porch, I took my notes with me, my little journal, and I put my hand on my heart and I'm like, all right, come on, girl. You know what you want. Kind of holding it there. I'm like, what's my message? What do I want to deliver? And joy comes first. So I write that down. I'm like, okay, joy. And now and literally found here came right after that. And as I was again holding my heart, I'm like, that's right. And what's my message? You always had the power. We always did, Dorothy. We all have the red ruby slippers. We have them, but we forget and we allow the external to tell us otherwise. So my message is really to remind us that it's there. It's in your control and it's there and it's there every day.
Yeah,
Not every moment, not 24/7. But find it and just notice it.
right. And that really ties into, obviously my podcast here is called Finding Focus. And so my greatest question that I always like to not only sit with myself, but ask other people. So, how do you find focus? When you find yourself going off on all these other tangents and
Mhm.
other things that are, maybe bombarding us, how do you bring yourself back into focus? How do you find focus?
That's it. It's such an excellent question and so good for me. I was in a positive energy group of what started out as 12 random women who I didn't know and a wonderful facilitator. And we stayed for 14 years, not all 12 of us, but 7 of us stayed together. My, my repetitive, um, not complaint, my repetitive want is focus and time, focus and time, focus and time, focus and time. So, what I find with focus, and as I continue my learning journey and learn a lot of different modalities, one being I'm very interested in human design.
Mm.
I happen to be a projector, which explains so much about me. And focus comes in answer to your question for me is when I get quiet because I have the hamster wheel in my head. Also, I've heard this word recently and I liked it because I felt it really described me, which is multi hyphenated. I want to do and I can do a lot of different things. My creativity comes out in a few different ways. Sometimes it's hard to hone it in, but I get focus in quiet, and that could just be, morning meditation while I'm kinda just laying in bed, nothing long. Again, I call on my angels every morning. I call them by name. I'm like, "All right, help a sister out. Here's either if I have something going on that day or just for additional guidance." I challenge the universe to show me how good it's gonna get. And then my quiet time is in the shower. My quiet time used to be in the car because I used to have like over an hour commute. And either I would listen to podcasts or I wouldn't. And that's when the secret sauce is in the quiet, but we don't allow that because we're always hooked in. We gotta listen. God forbid we talk to someone. You're always got noise being fed either into you or visually at you. And when you give that brain a little bit of rest, I'm not saying a 3-day silent retreat. My God, so much comes. So much
It's
comes.
almost like clearing it's like you have this foggy window or like a windshield that's dirty,
Mhm,
but when you
mhm.
can get quiet or you go through the car wash and it's clean, it's like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, I can
And
see
now
again."
I see. And then that's when it's so easy and a lot of times followed by, "Why did it take me so long?" Probably because I wasn't ready for it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
The timing part on life and on things the way I'm also a Taurus, so I like things, I'm comfortable in knowing what's going to happen. Some people might call that control. Um, and it's only very recently where, I took my hands off the wheel. And once I did that, my life has been pretty amazing.
I love that self-awareness. That's one of the things that I love talking with other people about because I know being more self-aware of who I am and how I am designed, and there's different ways you can design it, but I mean, I just found out that I'm one of these impulsive type of people, I make
Mhm.
decisions quickly. I'm not one of these people that's gonna go read the whole manual. I'm just like, "Okay, here it is. We're gonna put it together. We're just gonna do it." But it's having that understanding and awareness that, okay, this is how it's in my DNA. This is
Mhm.
I'm not a long-term planner. I can react and generally my intuition and guidance is spot on where I need to be. So I've learned to trust that. But you mentioned, just this human design aspect and I love, love, love conversations
Mhm.
on that because I think it helps us so much if we could understand who we are and
Yeah.
how we relate to the world, how we relate to others, how we communicate. It affects so much. So you mentioned you said you were a projector. Can you explain? I love talking about this human design.
So here's what I know, what little I know. As a matter of fact, I'm actually reading more about it. So as a projector, and it's interesting because I too can help people focus. Like I can see your greatness
Mm,
just by talking to you. And it's so obvious to me that and it drives me crazy. I'm like, "Can't you see that? You're so good at"
yeah.
fill in the blank. And people are like, no, I said, but you just said that. Or one thing about a projector, like we have to, I'll say protect our energy. So some people, it might come off as well, she's being lazy because she's not doing anything. And that's the quiet time where you got to fill it all in and then watch out at blast off. Like that's when it gets done and it gets done quickly, but it's not to be maintained.
Mhm.
You got to pull back a little, fill it up, make sure that cup is always overflowing, not just full. People only get your overflow,
I love
nothing
that.
cup, just what's all that extra. So we also tend to, as projectors, the general line when you read about projectors is we wait to be invited. We wait to be
Mhm.
invited in. And it makes so much like when I walk into I can read a room. I can, someone will say something and I'm like, well, clearly it wasn't his idea for the breakup. It was hers before I know the rest of the story. And they're like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Because he did this."
Mhm.
Like, I don't it's hearing things I wanna say differently, and then yeah, and that's what I know so far
Yeah,
about
I find that so fascinating when you said you can walk into a room and read it because I've experienced that too, where you can just you
I'm curious, do you know what kind you are? Do you know, have you
I
delved
don't.
into human design? You
Done
can
that.
just yeah, you just your birth date, where you were born, and the time, and the time isn't that important, but it'll still give you, a gauge, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
kinda like when your soul was delivered,
Oh, okay. Now
like
I've done some other
at
things
that
like that.
moment.
Is that related to the
Mhm.
gene keys type? Is that what that or is this human
Gene
design?
key. Yeah, so
Okay, okay,
gene
so I
keys
have done
are
that.
like
Done the
okay, so the gene keys are the next level down, like, the whole
okay.
chart is it's some things on it, don't ask,
It
but
gets a little
it
yeah.
talks about yes, it really talks about, like, your shadow, and that's getting, woo-woo and sometimes way over my head.
Right.
It's nice to know, like, if you obviously, when your kids were born, so when you realize, like, that's why they fill in the blank, and once you get, like, understanding of why people are the way they are or why they do what they do, because remember, life is always about us. People are doing that to us, they know exactly what we're not that important. We're not that
Yes.
important.
See,
So, and that opens up your room for compassion and grace. Like, oh, okay.
understanding. I
Mhm,
worked with a gentleman once, because I'm certified in what's called DISC, DISC. It's a
mhm,
behavioral type of assessment that people can take.
mhm.
You get questions, and then it basically spits out, okay, this is how you communicate with people. Are you're an
Right.
extrovert, introvert, all of that. But I had one gentleman that I was working with, that this is why it's so important to understand because he was having troubles with his adult son. His adult son was maybe 25, 26 years old, and this gentleman was in his early 60s. And he said, we just don't communicate.
Mhm.
And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about him because I knew how this gentleman communicated. And he says, well, he just always is attacking me with questions like, Dad, why are you doing this? Dad, where are you going with that? And Dad, why this? And I said, you need to understand that that's not attacking you. That is the way he gets information. He's very
Mhm.
direct about it. Whereas you are more gentle and softer and kind of come in the side door.
You gather it a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, you gather in a different
You'll read
way.
the simple note on the side and right,
Yeah,
right.
they were constantly butting heads because they could not communicate, even
Mhm.
the basic levels. So when he started thinking about that, and that gets to my point of how you can understand who you are and then start understanding how other people are relating to it changes
Yeah.
the dynamics, doesn't it?
It really, and it comes at a time where, again, next version, God only knows what, 64.5, whatever I am now, it's fun, and I wanna see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think that is such a key is understanding who we are, and when you the more that we can understand about ourselves, then it's like, "Oh, I get it. I
Mm,
get it," and now I don't have to be so frustrated with the exterior stuff that's happening because I'm good within myself. I
right.
I feel that.
Or I know what where I don't beat myself up if I wanted to do a 25 point, to-do list, and then that day I'm like, "Ugh, after the sauna, I'm good." So it really practices grace. It all feeds into it's an inside job. It didn't all of these learnings, and it could be 1,000 different ways to learn about what makes us tick because we're each one of a kind, masterpieces with no instruction manual. Good luck, everybody.
Isn't that right? And we get this programming from when we're early on, okay? You're born, you start going to school, and in school, you're going to learn XYZ, and then you're going to get a job, and then you're going
Mhm.
to probably get married and have a family, all of these expectations. But then we get to this age where we are, in the 60s, and we're like, okay, things have changed now. Now, where's the instruction manual for how we're
Correct.
supposed to live the rest of these days in this new phase of where we are? Because there's not an instruction manual. And that's what I think is so great about exploring these topics about
Yeah.
who we are and hearing other stories as you're sharing on your podcast, that this is what I'm doing now. And this is
Yeah.
what's working or not working and how I've
And
shifted. And, you know,
It it's so true, and what I love about this platform, we're on to going on our 5th year. I've done over 250 interviews, which is mind-boggling, and I'm just so, so appreciative of all of the guests that I've talked to on my computer. What we share in common is the roles of expectations. Just about everybody will come on and say, I thought I did it, I checked the boxes. I did this, I did this, I did this. And then one day, fill in the blank, whatever changed, if the rug was indeed literally pulled out from under you or life just happened. And then I decided, or I was forced to look at it a different way to kind of, rip off that outfit and what else I was wearing underneath that. And that's the nice thing about us because there's a ton of opportunity to change. We're not cast in plaster and it's never, ever, ever too late. And you can actually permission start before your 60s, which was a whole,
right,
you know,
right.
one of the reasons I'm like, I need to get this message out to the young ones because don't wait as long as I did.
Isn't that so true though? We think, okay, we gotta wait till get
Mm,
this thing done or miss when the stars align. When
mhm.
I get this, I'm gonna do that. And one of the things I think is so important for people to remember is that stop waiting.
Today's always a good day. I say it all the
Yeah,
time. It's not a Monday, and my day 1 is my day 1. That's your day 100. That's someone else's year 28,
ex
whatever it is. I don't we growing up, and my mother-in-law, may God rest her wonderful soul, she would always talk about "they people." "You people and they," and I'm like, "Who the hell are they? Who
yeah,
where are these judgy McJudgers? Where are they? And why do they care about me? They don't. So we worry so much about external other people. Your names are not in their mouths. They're not.
or not. Isn't it true that we are so, what's the word, conditioned to
Mhm.
comparing ourselves where
Mhm.
we are to what someone else is doing?
Always
And we
looking.
and we
Uh-huh.
let that just confine us rather than
Mhm.
saying, "I'm unique." And I
Mhm.
think that's part of what's so great about the messages that come across in the stories that you're sharing on your podcast, that everybody's path is different, and I think it's inspiring to hear where other people have been and what shifted and what changed and how they adapted to
I
this.
absolutely love hearing, on recording days, they're my best days. You can't slap the smile off my face. And it's, because I say that so much. I know I'm lucky and I get to do this. And I was doing it while working a full-time job. And I was, recording at 6 in the morning if someone was in Australia or Hong Kong. And I was recording at 7 o'clock at night because that's what time I got home. It didn't matter, that's how important it was to me,
Yeah,
and it also proved that we can do anything
right.
we to do.
So, with all the guests that you've had, and you talked about, kind of the theme that runs through all of that. Is there any one guest that maybe said something to you that really sparked a thought within yourself and said, "Oh my gosh, that really, really resonated for me."
Hard to pick one because there've been so many good ones. I will say that, when it comes to like scheduling the timing of things, the way they turn out I have no formal scheduling. I don't use Calendly. I'm a team of one. I'm the I in team. So how everything winds up turning out is really fun for me to watch. And I get onto these little themes like the beginning of last year when I was still in my season of very big transition. I had maybe similar to you, like I must have interviewed 4 intuitive channelers back to back to back. And just from it's not as though I just found them one day and scheduled them all, it's just how it worked out. So and it was just what I needed at the time.
Isn't that isn't that awesome?
It was just what I needed. I come from and I don't make a secret, I come from a very selfish standpoint of, "I wanna know more about you. Tell me more about you and what you do." I know listen, if one other person hears it, fantastic. I'm excited. Thankfully, there's more. But I wanna know. I'm a huge believer in coaches, all different types. There have been so many. So, in answer to your question, I don't have a specific because I've learned literally from infinitely from everyone, and to the point where in 2026, I'm actually coming at because I say it all the time that words are tattoos. I'm a firm believer in that.
Mhm.
So use them wisely because the teacher who said, you'll never do this, you'll always remember that one. Just as you'll remember that teacher who said, "You're really good at this." You're gonna remember both of those statements, so use your words wisely. So we're coming up and I don't know, I started saying, "Oh my god, that's today's tattoo. I love that line." I love a lot of lines, and I have a whole collection of them. We're just coming out with, mug of the month, Joy
Oh,
found here the month that'll have one quote each month from a different episode.
I love that.
That'll be on the website. Yeah, so very excited about that because it's important not only if you hear it once and if hopefully it hits you in the right way instead of stabbing, which words do. You can ask anyone that baggage that we love to carry with us, no reason. Because it was something that someone said as an aside, so flippant, and they forgot.
Yeah. It
Yeah, you bring it with you your whole life.
Right? And it's so hard to, like, just kinda almost sticks with you like this little scab or like a little wound that you've
The
got
time?
there,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
or then we just layer on more because you think, "Oh, they said that thing about me. Well, maybe this is true too." Then the next
Yeah,
thing you know, we're
and the story goes on.
story goes on. So I think so much of what is needed now is really helping people to learn how to put that salve on those wounds so that they start disappearing or softening at
Mhm.
least so
Right.
that, we don't have to live with those scars. They are part of maybe who we were, but they don't have to define us. They
Correct.
we can move on from those. So,
A lot of times you'll find what those deep, dark secrets are in your quiet. And then, having someone like you as a guide, as someone that is walking beside them safely. You flash that flashlight and light up the next step. And why do you think that? Who told you that? Our beliefs, we're not original.
yeah,
Someone told us something. Unless we were strong enough to look in the mirror and be like, I am a badass, God damn it. And I'm going to and I do that to myself a lot. Just as my self-talk can also go like, Stephanie, what the hell? What do you think? Like, stop being this. I can flip very easily to
yeah.
that, but I also have learned through my years to I celebrate my wins. I give myself a high five when I do something that I wanted to accomplish. I'm like, "You go, girl."
It's so much, we you're right. We get that somebody says something to it and we tend to believe it. I remember I was at a personal development training one time, and the gentleman said, "You've got to learn that you don't have to take everything that anybody says
Not
to you."
yours,
So what if
not
he
your
says, what if somebody says to you, "You are blonde and you're stupid." And then you look at yourself and you think, "What? I'm a brunette. I'm not blonde." So you think, "Why did you buy into that?" And then
mhm,
now it brings to the question, "Well, are you really stupid?" You don't have to believe everything that anybody says
right,
to you.
yeah.
So I think it's really about learning to be aware of the things that come into our heads. And then again, being strong enough within ourselves to say, nah, that's not me.
And it's definitely not easy,
Yeah.
and again, in the early part of the year while I was leaving, for the first time, probably for the first time in my overall working career, like, fought for my worthiness, and I never had to do that before. I was very fortunate in my whole working career that, my work spoke for itself. I was always rewarded. I never rarely had to ask for a raise or anything like that. But then when it was like at the end, I'm like, what is happening here? Let me introduce myself. Here's who I am, and here's why I deserve it. And it's probably the first time I ever said those words.
I think that is such a big step for so many people to take is
Mhm.
honoring who they are, honoring their own experiences. I used to teach a workshop, and one of the things that I would do at the beginning was I would tell people, okay, we're going to go around the room. I'm going to pair you up, and you're going to look at the other person, but we're going to start with just one of you. And I want you to follow this example. And it says, what I love, honor, and respect about myself. And you had
Ooh,
to
that's
talk for yourself about 1 minute
mm,
at the end, and then they switch sides. So I asked everybody, "How was that exercise for you?" I've had people say, I can't do that. I couldn't do that." They were not now, there were a few who said 1 minute was not enough time for me to talk about myself, but for the most part, I literally had some people just crying because they said, I can't talk about myself." They were so conditioned not to honor who they were, and I said, "Well, look at it this way." There are cultures who say, "You don't brag on yourself." That's not what we
mhm.
do.
Nope. Stay small.
Change the dialect around that. Consider it that you are honoring who you are. Going from Yeah, honor who you are, and because if you can't honor who you are and talk to other people about it, how can other people know how you can help them? And if that's what most people wanna do is to be of service to others, but you can't do that if they don't know about you. So,
And
change
interesting, I wonder if that was the first time anyone ever asked them that question
it
about themselves.
for a lot of people, it was because they told me at the end of that exercise, and granted, this exercise lasted 2 minutes. And they were saying, "I just can't do that." It was the hardest thing to do. And I remember when I was taken through that exercise myself at a retreat, and I had to talk about myself, I started boohooing. I really started I said, "I can't do this." And I didn't realize what a huge block that was because I had been told, "You don't brag on yourself. You don't do that." And
Mhm.
so it took a lot of coming out for
Yeah.
me to be able to say, "Oh, you know what? I have done this. I can do that." But it was also pointing out that you're not talking about bragging yourself. You have
Mm.
to honor who you are. Honor
Reminding
experience.
yourself who you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
reminding that's
Again, we're masterpieces,
yes.
God doesn't make junk. The fact that we would diminish ourselves, why?
Yeah. And
Because
it's you mentioned it too that it's important that you have other people around you
mm,
to remind you who
yes.
you are, and
Mhm,
that's so important. Even me as a reader, I go to other readers because I can't read myself. I
mhm,
cannot. But it's important that we have people around us who can talk to us and show us and guide us and ask us those tough questions because it's like somebody put to me, you can't see yourself as clearly as others can see you,
yep,
whatever that may be, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. But it's
mhm,
also like if you try to self diagnose yourself, it's like trying to read the ingredients from inside the mayonnaise jar. We just can't, we do it.
one exercise that we still do, this group that I'm with, even though we don't meet with the facilitator anymore, but we at the end of every year, we do a year in review about what we've accomplished because we do a lot. We do a lot. You put a goal out there, you do achieve it, or you said you were going to do this, or you stuck to the exercise regimen, whatever it is. But we forget and go back to the celebrate your wins. So a lot of times, and then if you wait till the end of the year, well, you're in, holiday overload, etc. So even though we talk about it at the end of the year, what we try to do is keep like a monthly recap. Keep notes in your phone, keep a special
Perfect.
note, a Google Doc or something of, hey, and I don't need 17 things. Like I did 2 things and oh me. Oh, and then I did this and then I did that. And when you do it with like-minded people, and it again, you don't need a group of 10, you don't need 7, you need maybe one other. Throw in another, whatever. They remind you of things that you forgot.
Yeah.
Just a little more reinforcement. Here's some more evidence that you are goddamn good. They're
That's it.
really
That is so true, and I love that, and you said it too. You don't need 10, 12, 15 other people to do
nope.
that. Just
Keep it
one
small.
other just one other person, one other like-minded person who can see the greatness in you.
Right.
I had a friend who sent me a text one time, and I thought that was so what I needed right at that moment. She had no idea, but she
Mhm.
said, "I wish you could see the amazing that I see in you."
Hmm.
And so I've
So
turned
that
that around and
again,
sent that
another
to
mug of the month. We may have
yes,
to ask for the rights on that one. I love it.
isn't that good? And I thought, "Oh my gosh," she had no idea, but I
Mhm.
thought, how powerful that is because then it gets you thinking, "She thinks I'm great, you're great. What is it that she's seeing?" But it's just a reminder. We need those gentle reminders because we tend to forget. We get beat up during the day or the
Mhm.
week or the month, and then we let that sit with us.
How
Then
long ago was that you received?
probably about a year ago, and here it is. I still remember that.
And do you get a lot of texts throughout a day, I mean, I would think, but yeah,
Yeah.
text
Yes.
you go back and forth. And
Yeah,
yet
okay, do this.
and you remembered that one.
Remembered that one, and I will still remember that one, and I've
How words.
sent that out to other people, and it just wherever it landed, it landed. I didn't need any kind of like, "Oh, thank you for sa" but I just know the impact that it had on me, and I think it
Mm,
does. Words, like you said, words have impact, you know?
yeah.
It
I
it
think that's such a great exercise too, when we have the grateful season upon us and some people could look at it like the stress, the cost, the this, the family, the wah 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 wah, or take that time just to sit back and be like, yeah, look at this, thanks.
exactly, and it can be so simple. We try to
And it's free.
overcomplicate things, and it's free. That's exactly it. There's no need to overcomplicate anything. I think that's maybe you're sensing that too, maybe through the talks you have. Don't you think that people are kind of coming to a point where they wanna simplify more,
Okay.
create
Oh,
less?
yeah, yeah, it is, again, the amount that we're being fed, and as the lovey of 2 little humans right now, 3.5 and 7 months, their parents weren't I don't even know what the hell my kids are. One will be 40, the one's in the 30s, one's 29, celebrating his last decade of the 20s. But, are they Gen Zs? Are they Gens? I don't even know what they
I don't
well, they didn't grow up with as much there wasn't the word screen time, where did that even come from? But I see it so prevalent. I see that, streaming. My grandson it's like episode after episode after episode, so there's hardly any commercials. He doesn't have to get up to change the channel, granted I'm old. But it is he's just used to receiving so that when that stops in front of him, I mean, it's a meltdown as though you've thrown hot lava on him. And it's because they're that's all their brain sees. It's crazy. And even, what we're seeing and We had TV, but there was only a couple of channels. You had, a movie, you had a show. We only had it on Saturday mornings.
And then it went off at midnight.
And it went off, and we're able to function, and these kids today, I do worry about the amount of information because our brains were never designed to handle it all, and, when you can just get outside and look at that cloud formation, watch those birds, you know, admire here in New York, it's autumn right now, the leaves are just a beautiful, beautiful color, the landscape before you, it's right here. And as opposed to us being on the screen at the time as we say this, I get it, but once we open that door, sky's the limit.
Right? It's so much about being in the present. I think
Mm,
so many people think, okay, I've got to meet this goal. I've got to reach this and I've got to do that.
ugh,
Or we think about, okay, I messed up back here last week and I didn't do that at whatever. But there's so much, as you were just saying, to be grateful for right here in the
yes,
present right now.
yeah,
People tend to forget that, I think, that and the
yeah.
present is the only place that we can make any
This is what
changes.
we got. This
Yeah,
is this
this
is
is
the
it.
only right now, hopefully you learn from the past, good, bad, and different. Another thing is go through life kind of looking for fun and explore and be curious versus having an expectation because that only brings on some disappointment.
So true.
Mhm.
That is so true because we set these
You set the bar
standards.
too high.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we set the bar that, okay, we've gotta have this, we've gotta make this income, we've gotta have this many viewers or whatever it might.
Checking, analytics, check the box, this many, that whatever it is. But those are just numbers or words on a piece of paper or on the screen. What's missing, that disconnect is the feeling.
There you go. Now, that reminded me of something that I had just read about recently, maybe a month or 2 ago, and it was about this thing concept, vision boards. Everybody knows what vision boards are. You put a picture of the car, the house, the vacation home, all of that stuff. But what I read from this individual was that while they're not he wasn't against vision boards, but he said vision boards can be limiting. And
Mhm.
he said, what you need to think about is that, you think, okay, I've got to have that car and then that's it. But what if the universe had something bigger for you in
Right.
mind?
Always been.
Yeah, so, when you said, "Okay, get into the feeling," that's what let's see, I'm getting chills even talking about that. It's like getting the feeling from what that image can create for you, but then now living into that feeling rather than, "Okay, I've gotta have this checked off and I've gotta have that checked off." So that totally shifted my thoughts around these vision boards that were and are still for some people the thing to do. But it's like, think bigger.
It's usually right. It's usually bigger and better. And
Yeah,
or better. Like I'd love this or better.
or better.
Um, Yeah, because we only know, we are limited based on our evidence that we've seen in our experience. But again, when you have the works of what's around us, that universe and those guides and everybody else will be like, "Oh, you ain't seen nothing yet."
There you go. There's so much more out there. There's so much more out there. So, what is lighting you up right now, or what's on the horizon for you that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I love that question. Well, I am very, as you can, I love words. I love great quotes. I'm a big collector. I'm a word nerd. So my mug of the month plan in 2026, and I love the fact that we're going to like release one a month. That is very, very exciting to me. We're starting and we haven't started yet. But as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know for your show notes, a Substack and a newsletter. I've got a lot that goes on in this head, and there's only so many hours I can record and only so many episodes I can do. But there's a ton more of just, I've been thinking, here's what I see. And my picture, it's usually clear, not fuzzy and it's got some color in it. It's not black and white. And even when things get a little crappy and sad and, the other side of good, I always have the hope.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Because at some point, that's really what's the most important thing is just having that, there's that beacon out there. There's
Little
that hope
glimpse.
out there's that light. It's always gonna be there. There is that
Mhm.
light that is within all of us. Sometimes it gets a little dim because of externals, but we
Yep.
all need to remember there's that little beacon, that little flame, that little light that's always there.
Always that little crack that comes beneath, in between the blinds, and it's not big. It's still dark, but it's out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? So, as we're winding up here, tell our listeners how to connect with you in all the various ways, however those may be. I know you talked about the things that are going to be coming. So, where can
It'll
they
be
expect to
Mhm.
find that and how can they find you?
Thank you, thank you. So, first and foremost, I would be honored if you listen to an episode or 2 of Joy Found Here podcast. We are on all the podcast platforms. Love for you to, if you like what you hear, follow. We love when people share our episodes. I think that's the greatest form of, okay, it landed. So there's that. Our website is joyfoundhere.com. That's where the mug of the month drops are going to be. I do hang out right now on Insta, which is at Stephanie Martinez Rivera. LinkedIn was a 2025/2026 dream, so we'll get there. And Facebook, I'm Stephanie Rivera. I definitely online, love to interact. Insta, easy, DM me. I read everything. Again, I'm the I in team.
Mhm.
So love to hear your feedback, any ideas, people you wanna hear from. Believe me, I've got a whole wish list also of guests coming up. And, yeah, that.
Well, and I look forward to continuing to follow your podcasts and listening to them because I just found them so insightful. And I just love listening to all the different stories. So, I'll be a follower of those and will be
Appreciate. Thank you.
leaving you some great reviews on that. So, anyway, but again, I want to thank my guest, Stephanie, here today. It's been so delightful to finally catch up and have this coffee conversation across the continent as we are. And I can't say enough good things about this and about what you're doing with Joy Found Here. Definitely joyful. With
Thank you.
that,
That was very kind.
absolutely. So with that, listeners, I'm going to sign off and we're hoping that you will rate, review, make some comments on this podcast, and be sure to connect with Stephanie and or through my podcast as well. And very much appreciate having all of you here. Hugs and aloha.